Hello, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Berlin Select Board for Monday, December 19th, 2022. Just as a quick note that the meetings of the Berlin Select Board are generally recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Access Channel, YouTube. Your voice, your image, and your telephone number may be recorded. Welcome to those people in the audience and those people who are watching us actually on the recordings. It's 7:01, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And we'll just jump right into approval of the December 5th minutes.
And I can make the motion to approve, but I'm going to abstain.
Right.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
I think we're ready for the vote then. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe abstain.
Stone eye.
Great. Is there correspondence, Kristen, that we should be aware of or hear about tonight?
I do not have specific correspondence for you this evening.
No, I don't know of any emails that were worthy of sort of discussion at this point. I think we'll start then bringing Paul Redmond forward. If we want to, people in the audience, if you have a general public comment you want to make before the meeting starts, or before we get to the presentation, raise your hand and we can recognize you. Seeing who's in the audience. And then I think, Kristen, you'll when Paul is ready and on camera and microphone, you can sort of take it away. And then Chief Shartner will get to you as our next presentation when this one is done.
Okay, great. I see Paul is here. Paul, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
I wanted to give a brief introduction and background kind of on the process of how this worked and how we came here today with Paul here before you as not only my recommendation, but the recommendation of the whole administrative finance team for appointment as the town's next treasurer collector. So as you know, we put out an advertisement. We received 8 responses and we interviewed the 3 most qualified candidates. And I have to tell you, we did get some very qualified candidates. And we spent a couple days really deliberating, doing our homework, doing background, reference checks rather, sorry, not background checks, reference checks. And we really liked everything that we heard and saw and about Paul. We actually did an informal over the phone second round interview with what we felt were the top 2 candidates. And we just really felt that Paul has the experience, basically he's got about 6 years of experience as a treasurer collector, but he has about 8 years of experience working with Vadar before this. So that is our software accounting system that we have. Paul's references were stellar. I have to be honest, they're some of the best I've heard in years. And I know everybody always says good things in their references about people, but the buzzwords were pretty impressive. And, Paul, you've made quite an impression on a lot of people. So without further ado, I present Paul Redmond to you as consideration for our next treasurer collector. He can answer any questions that you may have. I have put his resume and cover letter in the board folder for your review as well.
Peg, do you have questions you want to take on?
Scott, is that a rhetorical statement?
It sort of is, but I figured you get us going because I figured you already have some questions sort of at the ready. So
Of course I do. Paul, pleasure to meet you. How are you? Welcome.
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. So one of the questions that I have, could you describe a conversation that you've had with an unhappy taxpayer that you've worked with, and how you were able to resolve their issue and concern?
Sure, absolutely. So as I'm sure you can imagine, dealing with taxes and fees and things of that nature is not always the easiest conversations to have with anybody. But one of the things that I try to do anytime I'm having a conversation with anybody is putting myself in their shoes for a moment to make sure that I'm truly understanding what it is they're asking me and asking of me. I've had numerous instances of taxpayers coming in who, um, are upset about, what they believe their taxes should be, what they shouldn't be, um, any fees or interest that is accrued on the bill because it wasn't paid on time, things of that nature. And I typically, will explain first and foremost that there is mass general law in place as far as what we can do and what we can't do. Um, Typically, once you explain that to somebody, they seem to be, okay with whatever you have to say after that. Um, if they are still unhappy, I try to understand what their concerns are. Is there a reason, they weren't able to pay, or is there a reason that they, whatever the case may be. And I try to, explain to them, what the actual statutes state, what the standards are, and to the best of my ability, what I can do to help them out, if anything. I know that that's always not going to be the answer that the taxpayer wants to hear, but I know I can leave the conversation knowing that I explained everything thoroughly to them, in that, there shouldn't be any confusion. If you still have a question, I will stay there and talk to you for as long as it takes to understand, why something's being done, or anything like that. So, um, does that answer your question? I
Yes,
apologize.
it
Sometimes
does.
I
It does.
start
Thank
going.
you. Mhm. Don't worry, I have other ones lined up if Chris and
No,
Scott
that's
don't,
that's
so.
perfect. That's good.
Chris, do you have a question or two?
Um, Paul, in looking at your resume, maybe you'd like to give just a quick um, um, explanation of, perhaps, I see that you've been in most of your jobs for about 2 years.
Sure.
And, we're looking for somebody who will stay here for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. No,
So perhaps you'd like to just give me a quick overview, or give the board a quick
yeah,
overview of
absolutely.
what's going on.
Yeah. And like I actually even said in the interview process, that my goal is not to be moving from place to place to place. It took me, I just to kind of give you a full background on myself. When I graduated from college, I had a degree in business administration, and quite honestly, I had no clue what to do with that. It seemed like a good idea at the time. That's what I went with. Um, the first real taste, I guess, for lack of a better term, that I got as far as a municipality goes, is I worked for a company called Mark Altman and Associates, and they would actually print the tax bills for municipalities and mail them out for them. So that was the first job I had dealing with municipal government. And then from there, I moved to Vadar Systems, where I was there for 8+ years, working on the software support side and also the software testing side. So I was working hand in hand with a lot of treasurer collectors, town accountants, trying to, work out issues they were having with the software, or if it was a new implementation, getting them up to speed as to how the software worked. When I was working at Vader, that's when I really figured, I'm like, you know what? I think I could actually do the municipal government side of it. And that was where I got my first municipal job, working as the assistant treasurer collector in the town of Shrewsbury. From there, it was just kind of logical steps. I got my first treasurer collector position working for the town of Boxborough. From Boxborough, I got the opportunity to work in a bigger municipality, the town of Bellingham. And then from there, the opportunity to where I am now, working for the city of Leominster. Now, one thing that I can say through all of that is that while my initial thought process was, okay, you do this to get here, to get here, to get here. That is not what I want to do. I realized soon after starting in the town of Leominster, I mean, in the city of Leominster rather, that the politics involved with it and just the city atmosphere was not what I wanted to do. I enjoyed working in a smaller community. And as I explained to Kristen and the rest of the interview team, really where I felt like the most impact and, I guess for lack of a better term, enjoyed my job was working for the town of Boxborough, which is a similar community to Berlin. And I feel that I can day to day what you're doing when you're working in a bigger municipality can go, I don't want to say unnoticed, but you don't necessarily see the end result of everything. Where working in a smaller community, you actually get the satisfaction of seeing, okay, I'm taking this money in, I'm taking that money, I'm investing it, I'm using it to pay bills that are ultimately, you know, helping to build a new park or to whatever the case may be. And I feel that really the small, closer knit government is really what makes me feel the most satisfied, and that's why I came looking here in Berlin. And like I said, I don't despite what the resume shows, I'm not somebody who jumps all the time. It's just I I think I hadn't figured out exactly where I needed to be yet, and that's one of the, I guess, advantages of going through this process is it's helped me realize where I can really do the best work and be able to provide the most for the community, and that's in a smaller, close knit community like Berlin.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Go for it, Peg. I'm not gonna have many questions already.
So, let's see. How do you minimize errors when you verify the accuracy of each entry on the tax returns you review?
Well, I think what I try to do on any really just in anything in general, much less be a tax return, a tax payment, whatever the case may be, is I like to have multiple sets of eyes looking at everything. Um, because it's very easy, as I'm sure you can imagine doing anything yourself. If you've been working on something for a long time, numbers all start to look the same, letters all start to look the same. So I always like to have somebody else review something, especially something important, to make sure that there's no, that what we're stating is indeed the correct amounts, or making sure that if we're sending out anything that it's conveying the message that we're looking to set up. um, I have, as far as um, taxes go, as far as the federal state taxes, things like that, I actually have a separate spreadsheet where I track everything as well, so that when I get any type of documentation, whether it be from the payroll company or um, the Vadar system or whatever, I'm taking that number and verifying against what I have kept separately outside of the system. And those two should match. And if they don't match, then that's where I have to go digging and figure out what the issue is.
Chris, do you have any more? Because I have one more.
Go ahead, Peg.
So Paul, how would you stay organized under pressure? And how well do you switch from one focus to another? Meaning, you're working on paperwork for one tax collector and or taxpayer rather, and somebody calls and they're on the ledge and you need to talk them down. So this is going to cause you obviously to switch gears. How do you ensure that you're pulling up the proper notes of what you were working on versus what you need to work on now to make sure that you're not crossing them?
It's a good question. It's not an easy thing to do. First and foremost, it's a it is a balancing act each and every day, because each individual taxpayer or each individual situation is completely independent of one another. What I had somebody had taught me this, and I forgive me, I don't remember who it was, but I actually keep two notebooks next to me, and one being, just in case I'm working on something like your exact situation, where I'm working on something and then somebody else calls, I just switch over to the other one and start writing in that. So then that way I don't mess up when I'm, because you can ask my wife, she's right over there. She'll tell organization's not always my strong suit. So I have to make up little tricks for myself in order to keep organized. And once I've completed that call or that email or whatever it is, I then have, if it's an email, I'll set up like a separate folder to put emails in that relate to a particular person or a particular project or whatever it is. If it's physical written notes and I know that I'm going to need to go back to it later, I'll then, tear that piece out. I'll set up a separate folder, or I'll scan it or whatever the case may be in order to keep myself, straight, because you're right. It can be chaotic, and the last thing the world you want to do is think you're talking to one person about something and you got information for somebody else. It can be catastrophic depending on what the situation is. So no, it's not easy, that's for sure, but it's it is a necessity of the job. And I feel that while nobody's perfect, I've developed a couple of systems myself that have worked for me in the past. So that's what I try to go with.
And one final one, I lied. Why do you think that you stood out amongst all the other candidates? What made you rise to the top, in your opinion?
Sure. I mean, I think one, I think first and foremost, one of the things that Kristen had mentioned as well is just my, the amount of knowledge I have with the Vadar software system. I had said in the interview, and I believe it's true. I don't know that outside of one of the guys who owns the company that you're going to find somebody else who knows the ins and outs of how that system works better than I do. I've dealt with, we had over 100, Massachusetts municipalities. So pretty much any situation that came up, we had to deal with in one way, shape, or form. And I think, and I hope anyways, that one of the other things that set me apart is just that, I truly can't think of the way I want to put it. I believe that the town system of government is very important. I was actually, unfortunately, I had to step. I'm a member of the finance committee. I live in West Boylston, and just being able to be a part of local government and just seeing how important it is, especially in a smaller place where every dollar matters. Not that it doesn't everywhere, but where I am in Leominster currently, it's it's a big difference as far as how you're really counting every penny, and that needs to be accounted for, and that's important, and that's something that I take pride in being able to do. And I think that came across during the interview process. Excuse me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Now I truly am done.
Scott, could I add just one more thing?
Please.
So one of the things when we did our second, and by the way, it was an impromptu, informal call interview where we kind of sprung ourselves upon the final two candidates and said, "Hey, good afternoon. How are you? Do you have a minute to talk?" And I can tell you, Paul is very calm, cool, and collected in those types of situations, which was certainly noted. I think his customer service skills that he gained at Vadar were very strong, and his ability to just communicate and connect with people without, getting flustered. I was impressed with that. He also has experience with a split tax rate, CPA funds, and communities where you have commercial valuations dropping. He experienced that in Bellingham and in Leominster, and also obviously extensive experience on the recap and working with a financial team. So all in all, we really felt that he had the most well-rounded skill set for the position.
Great. I mean, for me, the idea that our finance administration team was sort of unanimous and excited about this is, I don't think I'm going to know anything better than the people who empower to those sort of things. So I'm very excited to hear that. Kristen, what are you looking for us today then?
So what I would be looking for is a vote to appoint Paul Redmond as the treasurer collector contingent upon successful negotiations. We would go into executive session later on tonight, discuss that, and then I would talk to Paul tomorrow and hopefully finalize everything. And then we would go from there. He is available to start a little bit before Dennis leaves. So there would be some overlap there, which was one of the things that was very important to us. I would obviously like to finalize it sooner rather than later so that he can give ample time to, his position, and we can also make sure we get him on board and working with Dennis a little bit before he retires on February 3rd. So I think it's a good time frame. We're right within that window that we want to be in.
Great. Someone willing to make that motion?
Can I just say so moved?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there more discussions? I think that's great. I thank you for your diligence like this, Kristen. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone eye.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul. And hopefully after our sort of executive session at the end of the meeting and your talk with Kristen tomorrow, we can come to some sort of agreement.
Sounds great to me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Thanks for attending tonight too.
Thanks, you as well.
And so we can bring forward Chief Shartner for our second presentation tonight.
Hi, good evening.
Hey, Eric.
Chief.
All right, so the month of November, 820 calls for service, 5 cases including involving criminal charges, 14 crashes with 4 having injuries, 62 stops and 40 citations. Annual toy drive was done this Saturday after Thanksgiving, as you saw from our post. It was a tremendous turnout, and we once again did well. Give credit to Officer Colony for that. He's the one that arranges everything and gets everybody together. And also a shout out to Jersey Mike's for feeding us that day, unexpected. Officer Andre, I'm sure you saw the post, delivered $1,220 to Ambets of Hudson. That money was from the last 2 years of selling our veterans patches. Detective Trongone continues to be busy at cases at Cabela's and reports of fraud. Unfortunately, we're still seeing a lot of fraud calls, even though everybody's well aware of what's been going on. Radios, spoke with Lee from Modular Communications. They have been ordered and they will not give them a date for delivery because everything is being made to specifications. Drone unit donation arrived 2 weeks ago. Drones have been ordered. Vehicle, we're just waiting to come in. All the lights for that vehicle are currently in. So once that vehicle's in, we'll get an outfit date for that car, and as well as getting our training in line as well. Policy was reviewed by town council. We made some modifications, very minor, more rearranging some words and a couple grammatical errors with it. But I sent the final draft today, which was the last 3 things they wanted. So that should be hopefully to the union before the first of the year, and I have to give them 30 days. Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, we reviewed the Complete Streets with Tim Wheeler. It was my first venture into Complete Streets. It is a multi-year lookout, but we did discuss that we do need to start looking at the list and thinking about getting some engineering done on some of the tasks that were developed prior to my arrival on the committee. that, you know, if it wasn't for COVID, would probably already be in the works by now. But I was shocked there's quite a bit of money to be given out to communities once you have some engineering done. But it is, I think, 4 or 5 year project outlook. It's not something you get money for right away. So we're going to work on that and try to come up with some definitive projects that we'd like to present to the board. I think the first one's going to be sidewalks, some sidewalk infrastructure within the center of town. Our 2022 Cruiser is in its final stages. All equipment is in, as well as the vehicle. We're waiting on a build date from McGovern. They're the ones that we bought the car from and are outfitting it. And with the staff shortage, you know, 5 years ago, we would have had the car a month ago. But right now we're waiting for a build date when they can get into the shop and build it. Officer Ledoux is graduating the academy on December 30th. So he'll be out on the road the first week of January. And that's about it. Questions, Peg?
Oh, Eric, I do adore you. You said in your report that the Carter Street sign was in a good place.
Oh, yeah,
What about the
yeah.
one in the center of town?
Yeah, you know, the one in the center of town, we've never had an issue. It's that one actually alarming is the best, one of the best percentages that we get next to the library one. I think that intersection really makes it difficult for people to speed, but all the traffic data that I've collected off that sign has been fantastic.
I noticed that there wasn't an ACO report for the
so
month,
last
so was
time-
wondering status on her reports, use of templates, and her testing to be complete
Yeah,
by next week.
yeah. When I came in, with my last report I did a few weeks ago, I actually had the Novembers. Those are
Okay.
the November calls up to date. So I plan on back January. I forgot, 11th, maybe
Mhm.
10th, 11th. I think
Mhm.
I'm back the first week in January, so I'll get the last week of November and January
Okay.
all together for that.
So what about her starting to use the state-approved templates and not just,
Yeah, that's you know, that's what I'm hoping the next round of reports do come in as the state templates.
okay. And her training, is it complete and will it be complete?
The training, as far as I know, she's still short hours, but is working with the state along with multiple other ACOs across the Commonwealth to figure out what's going to happen.
Okay. And final question, I know that you were doing the veterans patches and that's always a good thing. Is there any other thought to doing some other type of patch or around October for breast cancer awareness? I don't
We do
know
that.
how long
We
that
do-
takes. I mean, I'm buying shirts from Sterling and would love to wear one, instead of getting crap for wearing Town of Sterling, that I wear Town of Berlin,
I'll
around.
never give you any flack over that. Yeah, so we've actually had the breast cancer patches for a couple of years now. And, you know, I think the same thing with the veterans patches. We don't make much money on the patches, so I think
Yeah.
once they get enough together, they'll make their donation.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, if you could do shirts,
Yeah.
I think that would be a bonus. I'd sign up for at least 2 right now and probably
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, we did the hats a couple of years ago, and
I've got mine. Mhm.
yeah, I think we're down to 6 hats left out of I want to say a couple hundred. So, you know, I think the t-shirts is a great idea.
Okay.
You know,
Cool.
I'd like to actually do all of them, the veterans, the breast cancer and autism.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, now that our person who does our embroidery work has the technology for silk screening, I think that can be achievable.
Oh, nice. All right, Chief, I'm writing it in my book
Yeah.
and I'm gonna dog ear the page. So I'm gonna come back to you in October. Be like, Eric, where's my shirt?
Well, I mean, hopefully we do it before October, so.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's all I had.
Chris, do you have questions?
Not right now, no.
Chief, I think the new union contract put a minimum number of hours on to maintain status as a part-time officer. Is
Yeah,
that going
that's
to have
correct.
any sort of impact on staffing?
I don't think it's gonna have any impact on staffing, especially seeing the first 56 hours as training that's mandated. So, take the 250, it's 56 out of the 216. That's really not a lot.
And then how are you doing staffing as a whole then at the moment?
We'll be doing better next week when Officer Ledoux gets out. We do have an officer out IOD for 5.5 more weeks. So we're actually down 3 full-time officers right now.
And out of a total of how many full-time officers?
9. Third. We're down a third right now, but with Officer Ledoux getting out next week, he'll be back, and then the other officer that's IOD, he'll be back third week of January, I think, third, fourth, maybe the last week of January. So yeah, we'll be struggling for another month, and then we'll be, hopefully, knock on wood, back on target.
And then full staff is not the right word, but how many officers are on at any one period? It's like, it's a 2 at night and something during the daytime, or?
It's supposed to be two officers per shift.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our goal.
Eric, what's IOD? I'm sitting here trying to figure out what it could possibly be.
Injured on duty.
Thank you.
That's sort of it for my questions at the moment. And I think we might end up bumping you from January 9th, because that is actually just our next meeting, and so we might.
Yeah, well, I mean, which is absolutely fine, because I'll be prepared and have enough, and Officer Ledoux will be here as well.
Can we bring him to the meeting to say hi and join us if possible?
Yeah, that was the email chain that went on. I think all my days are confused. I think it was today, it might have been Friday, but it might have been today as well.
Okay.
Between Chris and Mary and I, we're trying to figure out how to get him on, or when to get him on, and then I'm more than happy to do it on the 9th, right? Yeah, more than happy to do it then. I'll be on vacation, but I will remote in.
Cool.
That might be it then.
That is it. That's all I got.
Well, great.
All right.
Thanks for the report, Chief, and
Good to see you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too, Eric. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I have to go back and look at the agenda. I had those two memorized. I think next is Town Administrator report. Take it away, Kristen.
Me. Okay. So it's boring to talk about the budget every meeting, but that's what's going to be happening for a while. So accounting has been, June specifically, and Amy have been reviewing the submitted department budgets, bouncing back any that had changes, or she was concerned about, had questions, something didn't make sense, and then having them revised and resubmitted to me. So I have started putting together a very preliminary spreadsheet. The Personnel Committee met last week. We talked about proposed market and merit increases, which will be incorporated into the draft budget. Finance Committee budget meetings started last week as well with fire and the school departments, and they will resume again in January, every Wednesday through March. And then at the Select Board's next meeting on January 9th, I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys like to kind of do the budgets in pieces, bring forward kind of chunks of the budget. So I will be prepared to start giving you the first section of budgets on the 9th. Most of the last 2 weeks were spent in department head recruitment mode, looking for the new treasurer collector and the hopeful new fire chief and EMS director, which will be discussed later on this evening. Went to one meeting that was really interesting. I wanted to make a comment about was I was contacted by a representative from Habitat for Humanity to discuss some of the services that they provide. Berlin is one of 30 cities and towns in their catchment area. They build 2 houses a year, and they do 24 critical home repairs. Now, I knew about the houses. I did not know about the home repairs. And that can be anything from a roof to ADA to anything that would keep someone safe in their home. So something to keep in mind, I've shared this information with Victoria, but if you know of anybody, connecting them up with Victoria, who is obviously doing our social services, would be great, or letting me know. We can reach out to Habitat for Humanity, because that's a great service that I was not aware they provided. They were not in my previous community. Also, while we're on the topic of Victoria, we met with UMass to review the draft Berlin Community Survey, which we're hoping to mail out mid-February. They have done an excellent job so far. I think they're capturing a lot of segments of the population, age, gender. It's really fascinating to see what kind of data we're going to get back about the future of Berlin, how people feel about our services, what they think cost of living, is how is affecting them, what they're able to do, what they're not able to do. And it's completely anonymous. And so we will start putting out more information early next month. There will be postcards that will go out in the mail. There will be paper surveys that will be mailed to everybody over the age of 50. And there will also be the postcards will have an online link, and those will be mailed to everyone. And this is funded by UMass. So this is a great service that I think is going to help build some data for us to figure out where the needs are at. And then we can basically devise some plans on how to attack those needs going forward. So in addition to that, I've still been working on the personnel policy manual, which I am hoping to bring to the personnel committee next week, along with, be prepared, the draft job description and posting for the admin for the highway department. That is in their budget, and we really need to get moving on that. So I have prepared that actually today. I'm going back and forth with Fred on it, and want to get that on next week's personnel committee so we can post it out beginning of the year. Let's see. We have a new copy machine lease. It's actually about $20 a month cheaper than our previous one. Part of that is because we made a decision to go with 2 copiers, the 2 main large copiers, instead of the 2 main copiers. Plus there was a small printer that was in the board and committee room that was leased. That was doing less than 200 pages a month. Really didn't make a lot of sense to use it when there's a large copy machine right down the hall. They actually were willing to sell us out that machine, and the town clerk right now, all of her copy machines were broken. She wasn't able to print marriage or death certificates from her office. So we were able to kind of do a bit of a trade-off there that was very helpful for everybody. And let's see, working on the Hearst House, hope to bring that forward to you all for the January 23rd meeting. Many thanks to Mary Porter for starting to draft that agreement, and we're hammering out some of the finer details. I also submitted a grant application. The project is actually for $30,000. The grant is for $26,800 to the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency to fund a 5-year update of the town's local multi-hazard mitigation plan, which is required to be updated every 5 years. And ours expires in the summer of 23. So this timing would be perfect. The matching funds would be $3,200 in staff time. And it would basically be a team of myself, public safety officials, Mary, building inspector. And so it's basically in-kind employee time given toward updating that plan that would count for our match. So no actual funds being expended other than employee time. And like I said, this is something that allows us to apply for grants, and it is a requirement, and it's good to have for the community because first, from a safety perspective. Also, just to keep you all in the loop, we did have to do 2 reserve fund transfer requests, both of which were approved by the FinCom on December 14th. One was the $4,700 for the software update for the municipal office cameras that we had spoke about at the last meeting. They did approve that. And the one that's a little tougher to swallow is $50,000 for the legal budget. Unfortunately, we've just had a number of matters ongoing that have needed to be addressed. And we, have burned through our legal budget already by the end of November. So I am trying to use them very sparingly as much as I can going forward. But it looks like that is about what we will need to get us through the rest of the year. Hopefully we won't need any more than that. Some of the larger items that were eating up a lot of that funding have come to a close or are coming to a close. So I am hopeful that we will start to see those bills decrease. I also pushed out a calendar today for at the FinCom's request for when everyone else will be meeting with them on their budgets and to confirm that they are available. So if you haven't seen it, check your email. If you don't receive it, please let me know. And finally, I had a very interesting meeting today with a company called 6 a.m. Health. They do what are called healthy vending machines. And we have the opportunity to get a $5,000 grant that can be renewed annually for a healthy vending machine for the town hall. It's really neat. They call it a fresh fridge. It's on wheels. It's like 2 feet by 2 feet and 6.5 feet tall. It has a credit card swipe. It has sandwiches, salads, different snacks. The grant would cover their monthly service fee, their deliveries, all of those things. And it would be paid for by Maya, our health insurance company, should we receive the grant. It's part of their wellness grant opportunities. So that's something we were looking into. Sorry, that was long-winded. A lot going on.
There's a lot going
There sure is.
on. Chris, go first.
Kristen, I was just wondering if the schools were able to share any information about their budget.
So they were. It's very preliminary at this point. They presented us with what they're calling a level service and an above level service, but much needed budget. The level service budget increases by 12%. The above level but much needed budget increases by 20%. They have they have not broken that down into what Berlin's portion would be. I am in contact with Nancy, the new finance director over there, as well as Carol Costello, the interim superintendent. And I have asked, as soon as they have that information, to please get that over to me. That is going to have a significant impact, obviously, on the budget, along with Worcester Regional going up $48,000 and a number of other large expenses that we have. So it will be challenging. We will figure it out. I think that we're not going to have, unfortunately, a lot of room, obviously, in the budget, and we're going to have to figure out what to do about the schools. They spent, Peg, I believe, listened in on that meeting, about an hour and a half, and they walked us through every aspect of their requests. They were very forthcoming and willing to give information and answer questions. I don't know how we can support that within our budget. But the case they were making was that they can't do without it. So at a minimum of 12%.
It is still early, though, I have to say. And
It is early.
sometimes they start high early, and then as time goes on, budgets change or things change where maybe something isn't needed as much as it might have been. So
Sure.
cross your fingers.
That
Well,
is my hope.
I think what was striking to me was that they talked about how there seemed to be, kids leaving, Berlin kids leaving, Boylston kids leaving. And you know what? I've been out of high school since '80, and that has always gone on. So it's nothing new. The numbers that they provided for percentage of kids leaving, and then they broke it down to Berlin kids leaving, was small. So I was curious about that. And what I took away with it is they seem to imply that they're in competition with Assabet, that they need to offer some of the same services that Assabet does to keep kids. But, having a child that is not a book type of kid and is more hands-on, to me, both schools serve a purpose. They serve different populations of kids. So to almost try and say, well, we need to do what we can to keep kids here, I think is a disservice to the kids. If you learn best by hands-on and learning how to be a cook or a electrician or any of the other fantastic programs that Assabet offers, let them go. And if you've got, the bookwormy kids that want to stay at Tohoto and take all advanced prep classes, let them stay. So that comment kind of caught me off guard, that they want to try and keep keep kids at Tohoto when that's why there's school choice. Parents are going to put kids where they need to go, to learn best. So, but as you
I
say,
don't think we as a board want to pit, the
No.
different schools against each other. So
No.
don't even, put that before us.
yeah, but that was a comment that was made during their discussion. It
Yeah.
was very clear. I, wrote that down in my notes. So that kind of caught me off guard. Yeah.
In the presentation they mailed out, their increase under special education is the same for both the high school and the Berlin Memorial. And I just think there must be something wrong to think that we have 2 new students both at Tohoto for the exact same % increase as you have at Berlin Memorial, and whether or not they're doubling up accidentally somewhere. I also think that in my years of FinCom and now Select Board, that every year there are new special ed students that cost us more money, except that the existing ones don't seem to ever graduate. And so we had like 600 special ed students now at this point, because I keep thinking at some point these kids are going to graduate high school and go on to something else. That's the purpose of having them. And so,
We're responsible for some of them until they're 20.
6,
Yeah, I don't know if
26 or 21, one of
I
those.
think
Yeah.
at some point in time, some of these people would hit that age. I have never in 12 years seen like, hey, special ed is going to go down because they've aged out or moved to another city or don't need something anymore. There's always more and more and more students. And that doesn't seem to be that doesn't seem to make mathematical sense. And I thought they were talking about that the number of kids total at Tohoto is going down. So if the total kids are going down, why is the cost going up 12%? Because their education plan talks about hiring new teachers here and there. And if your population is going down, I don't get why you need to add to the total number of teachers. And so I encourage us, and maybe as individuals and Kristen, maybe as town administrator, I would reach out to Boylston as well to make sure that there's conversation between the 2 towns that are paying this. If Boylston somehow magically has the money and we're the people who don't, then maybe we try. But it's typically been, because we pay 1/3 of it, where Boylston pays 2/3 of it. We're talking about almost $1 million increase.
Yeah.
And actually Tohoto is at 2 million. So yeah, our town is near $1 million increase for the schools. And so it's not going to fly.
Yeah, they were saying that.
You say, sorry, you get a 5% increase and that's it. And that's what passes the floor of town meeting. And I don't know what they do at that point.
What did they have a response to the letter that we had sent them, Kristen?
Well, ironically, right before we sent the letter, I received an email stating that the estimated budget increase was going to be 20%.
Yeah.
And I wrote them back and said, do you have any more details on this? Because this is concerning. And you will be receiving a letter. From what I understand, in that letter, we asked them to present the same information that they had presented last year. They do have some new people. And from what I understand, it was not the same as it was in previous years. However, they've said any information we want to request from them, they're happy to provide. And they will be coming back before FinCom on February 22nd, provided they confirm. That's tentative. And we tentatively have Assabet scheduled for February 15th, if anyone's interested in that as well. I will say, Peg, they did make that argument about Assabet. One thing they noted was private schools. And they made the argument about increasing their technology in some of the classes that they're offered. That they offer, so they weren't losing kids to private school, which I understand a little bit more, I think, than the vocational tuition side, because those are equal but different, opportunities in a lot of ways. But I don't know financially how you can compete with private schools. That is certainly a challenge.
I mean, Kristen, when I was at Tohoto, the Boylston kids at 9th grade, either left for St. John's or Notre Dame, and, for the girls, and then the Berlin kids generally left for Assabet. So I don't see that much of a change. And Scott, some of the numbers that they provided said in FY22, there was a 4% decrease in the population, which was about 20 kids. And then in fiscal year 23 was a 3% decrease in kids. And then for Berlin, just Berlin, it was a 4% increase in 22, but a 0% increase in 23. So, as I looked at, here's their 12% plan and here's their 20% plan. And a lot of the items were the same. So for me, I've got to like make a chart to say, you want one of these, you want 3 of these, you want new desks over here, but you don't want them over here. So yeah, thank you for that. Mary, I'm thinking that that's you who put that up.
It was me, but that's okay.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. Well, I never know who's the wizard behind the curtain.
Behind the
so.
curtain, that's right. So this is Tohoto, where they broke out Berlin students, and then the top one is Tohoto General, the bottom one is Berlin only, and you can see those decreasing numbers there.
Well, and it does have to do with the number of students we have in comparison to Boylston. It's not always 1/3, 2/3. It's gone up and down. It's gone up as high as like, I don't know, 39%.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's been between 29 and 39 is about where it goes, and it goes up or down a little bit here and there.
Right. But that has to do with your assessment then.
I
So,
mean, they have seen a fairly significant increase in Berlin Memorial, 15% in 22 and 6% in 23, after seeing a number of years of almost level or declining. So that's interesting to watch. But again, the assumption is not all of those students would stay for high school.
Right.
So.
right. Well, it's all very interesting, and hopefully as time goes on, the numbers will go down.
It's disappointing that after last year where they asked for a large amount and we said, boy, we maybe can do this once, but don't come back to us again for another large amount next
Right.
year. They doubled or tripled the large amount they asked for last year. It's just,
It's not sustainable.
No, well, their comment was that they had backed down year over year, and they're finally getting to a point where they can't back down anymore. So where they backed down a little last year and then a little before, this
Right.
year they've got to come up to meet the back downs.
problem is their back down is from like last year, 12% to 7%, and
Right.
so
Right.
their back down numbers are still unsustainable for the town.
Yeah.
Kristen, still on budgets, are there departments or areas we've not received budgets on yet?
There are some that are still being gone through by accounting, but as
Right.
far as I know, I believe we
received all of them.
received all of them. If that's not the case, I will be sure to do some public shaming. How's that? No, I will confirm with June. But I believe we have, and she's just in the
Wow.
process. Some required a little back and forth clarification, but
Which is why we have the dates we have. We don't expect all of them to be in super final polished form, but to have them in so you can catch those early. So we're not catching those on, because I can tell you on FinCom, catching those in like March, where you're like trying to balance everything out and all the 18 spreadsheets you have to then rebalance every time you find one of those mistakes.
right. I'm hoping, knock on wood, everyone hope for me for a very quiet week between Christmas and New Year's. We're full of
Kristen, do you
budget.
want to borrow my spirit animal shirt just in case if you have to, public shame? Just
If you
saying.
have a happier one, sure.
No.
And then Kristen, are we going to be worried that there's not going to be enough reserve funds themselves to get us through the end of the year?
So I believe the reserve fund is it 100,000 for, I'm just trying to recall what it was for 23. So you still have, what is that,
50,
30?
45.
Yeah, sorry, not 30, 40, 44 and change.
I think once we get to May, we can transfer from lines that are underutilized too.
I was just gonna say, we can replenish that at Maytown meeting. Worst comes to worst, that can be replenished through free cash, if need be, as that's a one-time reserve, fund, so we can look to that. But I don't, at this time, see really anything else that may be on the radar other than, some police, payroll overtime potentially that we're looking at. And we try to put everything on the FinCom's radar well in advance. Like we started talking about the legal budget, I think back in September. So,
Yep, and we were warned about it a couple of times even ourselves.
yeah. And Chief Shartner has mentioned the part, I believe it's the part-timer payroll. They're backfilling while they've got the 2 officers training. And now, of course, you have one injured. So I'll keep you posted on that one.
And then Fred, the highway superintendent, did not get in to see select board in December, mostly because we've missed a couple meetings and
Yes.
a couple of things. So you included his report with your report.
I did. I can give you a little quick summary if you'd like. Sorry, I felt I was being wordy.
That's fine.
So he did, November was finishing up cleanups of cemeteries, ball fields, library, and municipal center for leaves, roadside mowing. Gazebo repairs were finished and the gazebo will be painted in the spring. They did some pothole and minor road defect repairs. The hot top plant in Marlboro apparently shut down the second week of December. So that's that for road pothole repairs at this time. They've done some winterization, cleaned up brush. They did a lot of tree work with the new truck, which is working really well, which is great. He wanted to let us know that one of the employees, Brendan, had secured his hydraulic licenses, which enabled him and Tom to start cleaning out basins. New employee started on the 21st and is doing a great job. The municipal roof, as we've discussed, had a leak. They went up with the insurance company, and believe it or not, all of that was caused by 2 holes the size of pencil erasers found on the easterly side of the front of the building, and a dry rotted crack at the base corner of the air handler. They were silicone and appear to be holding as of the last rain shower, which he has down as November 30th, but that still stands as of today. He's cleaned gutters, and it appears that we have a good handle on the mouse issue at the municipal offices.
Yay.
Yay, since I'm here all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, did you get into your questions? I know we went down the sort of school one with Chris, and then I took over with some other budget stuff.
A couple questions. Kristen, rather, where are we on Verizon feedback? Have all the committees that you reached out to sent information back, and have we received what we requested back from Verizon in terms of environmental studies or information that they could share as to issues?
So I haven't received anything back from Verizon. I sent them feedback from both the building inspector and the Conservation Commission, as well as the treasurer, who was commenting on which parcels were owned and tax title and that sort. But that's where it stands for right now. And he's been recommended to go before conservation. They think they're one of those parcels may be viable. One of them is Mount Pisgah, so that's probably not viable.
That's a hard no.
Yeah, but the other one,
Rattlesnake Hill. Yeah.
thank you. It possibly is. So I have put him in touch with Carolyn McDonald there, and from what I understand, he's coming to the next Conservation Commission meeting. He also will need to speak to the ZBA, and Chief Clark has given some feedback also about something relative to, I want to say, the
Access roads
and access.
And antennas. No.
So pretty much have gotten a good, well-rounded amount of feedback on our end. I think that he needs some more feedback. He, meaning Igor from Verizon, needs to figure out if that parcel is viable from Concom and from a zoning perspective before he really moves forward with much else at this point.
Okay.
And I've connected him up with Rich over
Mr.
in that
Hanks.
building as well. Yeah.
Okay. I know you were talking about policies, and obviously it's not something that we need to decide on tonight, but where we won't get into a bind, or where we can stop ourselves from getting into a bind, is can we put something together for maybe a 3 to 5 year review cycle of policies, across the board as needed? Because, think about it, personnel is attacking policies that haven't been touched since I left well over 12, 15 years ago. So I think if we can keep a better handle on the rotation, then we'll zip through them a lot quicker. One of them being the hardship one on the ambulance. That started 4 years ago. When I first joined. I don't think it's been touched. Maybe somebody like Victoria, who has, the ear of people who are like, oh, I don't want to call the ambulance because I don't want to get stuck with the bill. Maybe she take a look at it, maybe new chief take a look at it, you take a look at it, but if we can, kind of somehow, not overburden anybody, I know that's funny, but kind of get that up if it is a concern from our citizens, our senior population, or actually any population in town that needs to call an ambulance to take a look at.
Yep, so I've already started looking into that. Your ears must be burning actually, because I've reached out to Chief Clark and Victoria, and they had sent me back some information, and I'll be following up with them shortly to see what we can do on that.
Okay. And Kristen, you forgot to share all our good news, or did you share it and I wasn't paying attention because I was writing notes?
Which good news? We have good news?
Last week? ADA grant?
Oh, yes. So Peg wrote an 88 grant. I'm just gonna say it, you really did. I helped, Victoria helped, but
Julie from
and
finance,
Julie
yep.
From finance helped, but we did receive an $8,000 ADA grant for some minor upgrades in a couple of the town buildings. This is some of sort of what you'd call the low-hanging fruit,
Yep.
small items, but they make a big difference.
Yep.
And we will be working on that next month.
Yes.
After I get my quiet holiday week.
Yep.
We're excited to have received that. I think that the approach was very smart of going for a small amount of money for
Mm.
some very tangible, easy to fix things. The state seemed to like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were really repetitive work. You wrap a pipe upstairs, you wrap a pipe downstairs, you turn the water on a little bit hotter and a little bit longer upstairs, you turn it on a little bit longer and a little bit hotter downstairs. So, we'll have to take a look at that, and obviously, pull in Mr. Hanks, Fred for input, not for work. Nope. The whole goal was this was going to be hired out. This was not going to burden highway to say, oh, hey, by the way, can you adjust that door, for that. So once we get going on that, we can come back with our plan, which everything needs to be completed and invoices in by end of June 23. But we should be in really good shape. So thank you, Kristen, for taking a look at it and adding some information, and to Victoria and Julie as well. So happy to be bringing that, and may that be the first of many. We'll attack the same thing this coming year. We'll take the next small chunk and get it done. So yay. Okay, that's all I got.
Good. Chris, do you have anything else before I move on?
Nope.
Old business then. Coffee Talk Logistics. Because of holidays and other stuff, we might only have like 1 or 2 more meetings between now and Coffee Talk. And so I want to make sure we have sort of an idea of agenda, agree on the starting time, and any other sort of little pieces, so that when we meet on the 9th, we are at far enough along where we can finish off, including potentially even getting some of the word out that we're having this. I think from the meeting that you didn't, you weren't available to attend, Chris, we were looking at potentially the welcoming of a new fire chief, assuming that there is one, potentially a short hi from our new state senator and our re-elected state representative, and Victoria doing a little bit more on the sort of social service director updates, and a chance for her to talk, or us to talk also about the UMass survey that would be coming out in a couple of weeks after the Coffee Talk.
I did talk to Kristen after the meeting, and she filled me in on those things. And it sounds like you've got a full agenda for Coffee Talk.
Yeah, I think because then we can just the random, hey, are there other questions people have? Mary has had the note on the sort of draft agenda that we were dropping, that we, of course, we start select board meetings with, meetings are generally recorded for transmission, but that maybe at the start of the meeting also to talk about what a coffee talk really is. That it's an open meeting, the select board discussing issues, hearing presentations, but does not normally include business. I want to add to that, because it feels awkward in the meeting when it happens, to say that there might be things that come up that we as select board members can't say anything on or discuss because it wasn't officially on the agenda. And so if someone asked a question at the end about, how do we feel, let's say, about school board budgets, or how do we feel about, the pothole at this town, that there's a limit to what we can say, because we're not allowed to deliberate unless it was sort of announced ahead of time.
Right.
And so if I say that at the beginning, if something comes up where we're all sort of staring at each other, all three of us knowing where there's something we want to say, but really can't, that at least has been said earlier on and we can remind people of it. And that we're not trying to dodge a difficult question. There's just sometimes, to follow the state rules, we can't say much, except that's a really good point. We'll put it on a future agenda and we'll let you know about it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
We can formalize more that, are we gonna keep trying to do these over Zoomish? Are we gonna try to do it hybrid? Are we gonna try to do it in person? I think to get some of these people here, they're gonna want to be sort of remote and not, some of the presenters might not want to spend the whole night there. But what are feelings about that?
Well, I meant to talk to you before the meeting started.
Mhm.
Without making a long story long, I did end up last week back in the hospital with an infection from my back surgery. So I'm on the IV antibiotics right now, and I don't think I'm going anywhere for about 6 weeks.
I will add too that I've been watching Berlin's numbers, as I think I let you all know, they were quite high. They've come down a bit, but we did have some town employees test positive for COVID. So I'm not sure how things are going to be in a month, but I don't imagine they will be getting much better as we're still in the winter. I don't know if this might be advisable given the time of year to do a virtual one, and we could look to perhaps an in-person one in the spring.
Yeah,
I mean,
I heard
plan
that.
for Zoom, and if things change, but at least, start to get the word out. And I think if you cite, just concerns, for the public, and then just leave it at that. But yeah, I would love to come back and start meeting in person. It'll give me an opportunity to put on real pants and not jammy pants, so it'll be all good.
Well, you can put them on
I was
for us.
going to say you could still do that.
Yeah.
Why?
We all show up with really nice shirts and jammy pants on for the in-person meetings.
Oh, yes, that would be lovely. Okay. All right.
Eyes and
And I
pajamas.
think for the agenda for that day, I don't think we're going to follow, Chris, in this sort of standard shell we normally do for others. So like old business, new business,
Yeah.
approval of minutes, correspondence, public comment. I think that's all going to just drop off.
I was just going to ask, do you have a certain order, like, would you want to perhaps introduce, I know we talked about introducing the new fire chief. Would you
Yep.
want to perhaps do that first?
Yeah, I think if we did that first, and then went to, I think
Robin and Meg, tag team them.
is right. Yeah, Senator first, representative second, I think is how you're supposed to do those.
Well, and technically, I guess if they're going to be there, maybe we should introduce them before the fire chief. I mean, just out of respect.
Yeah.
Order wise, yeah, I was thinking new person, but then forgetting the reps. Yeah.
Come on, Meg showed up in reindeer antlers on Xmas in Berlin, so I think she's okay.
We have some
Yeah.
really great representatives.
That's wonderful.
And then I think actually the representatives that sort of relatively short of what's going on in themselves, introduction, probably even making a point that they can share contact stuff, but that I think that the bulk of time for me, I think, is Victoria of some of the social service stuff going on in town, so the resources that are available, and the UMass survey, because I think the UMass survey, if we give that a big sort of push here, that will get it really heavily into the town rumor mill. And the more that people see this as both real, important, and legitimate, the more responses we get, the better data we get out of it as well.
And most importantly, truly anonymous.
Right.
We know it's a small community and people know each other. And so we really want to make sure that folks feel that they can answer honestly.
Mhm.
All right. Are those just the 3 items?
I think so. We'll use the select board Zoom link, I assume.
Yeah, hey, were there any questions from our old coffee talk? I know that Paul McKelk from Board of Health raised a couple of concerns about priorities and things that Margaret might have started, but we didn't get to between her leaving and Kristen, you coming on board. So
I had
maybe if
followed
we
up
could go
with
back
him.
and look at notes.
Yeah, he wanted to know about communication. I had followed up with him. And I've been in touch with him often since. I could certainly make mention of that to him to see if he's satisfied with the level of communications as to how they're going.
Mhm. I don't, I hesitate to say this, but, Kristen, do we talk about budget at all? Because,
Well, I
just like a smidge, not to get into it too deep, but
Yeah.
I think, that if there are going to be gigantic increases that we can't get out of, that we owe it to the residents to almost give them a heads up. And hopefully, kind of like push them along to come to town meeting, that if they really have issues, they stand up. They stand up and they ask questions and they push back and, feel free to say no. And this is why.
Well,
mean,
and it's very
guess-
early, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. It's maybe a short amount of time for budget, because the next coffee talk,
Right, it's all of you.
one that would be
It'd be all about budget. Yep.
we could just put a few, key points and key deadlines on folks' radar, kind of like what I've been doing this fall and winter so far.
Okay.
Mary, I've done some edits to the agenda for that night. Hopefully I've not destroyed the pattern too horribly.
Okay. And Peg, have the rep and the senator and the rep confirmed, or does our office need to reach out to them?
We'll need to reach out to them. I did ask both of them to come and they said yes. I said it was the third week in January, but couldn't remember the date. So probably have to give it to them and maybe give them an opportunity to talk about things that are going on in the legislature, for funding that maybe Berlin can piggyback on and, take advantage of, and maybe, some of the goals or some of the things that they're working towards. But no, both of them, especially Senator-elect Kennedy was stoked to be able to come. I think this would be Meg's second or third go round. But Robin was happy to get in front of folks in town.
Great.
That's great.
We will make sure to reach out.
Cool.
Okay, let's get on to the new business. We have the appointment of Eric Baum to the Agricultural Commission as an alternate member through the term of 5/31/23.
I'd like to make the motion that Eric Baum be appointed to the Agricultural Commission as the alternate member through 5/31/2023.
Second.
And just confirming for people who are watching it that the Agricultural Commission has already voted on this, and that was their recommendation to us.
Correct.
I think we're ready to vote then. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Great. On to our favorite end of your task, licensing.
All right.
Who is gonna take over and do some is presenting? I know there's a bunch of things in our board packets for tonight.
So
fine.
I would love to turn it over to Mary. I can just give you a really brief overview. There's a couple of things that you all need to vote on. Obviously, the liquor licenses are the most timely, and in your folder, there is the 13 renewals that all have been filed on time, and paperwork Mary can speak to, but it's my understanding that has been filed as well. And then you also have your general select board license renewals for the year. In addition to all alcohol, you have your common victulars, your entertainment licenses, and public amusement, autos, etc. for your typical annual license. I don't believe there's anything out of the ordinary, but I will turn it over to Mary, since this has been the lion's share of what she's been working on for the past couple of months.
All feedback has been fine to renew everybody. The only one that hasn't paid or responded yet is the arcade within the Regal Cinema. So if you approve them all, I would, as we usually do, I'd withhold that one from release until they pay. But otherwise, all feedback from department heads is that all are clear to renew.
And remind us, Mary, what was town council's advice about this just to let it go if they don't pay, or what? Can we shut them down? Didn't we contact?
I don't think there's any teeth in that. I don't,
Okay. That's what I seem to remember, but I
I
just,
thought the teeth was we couldn't go back. But I thought at some point, because there was question about like whether or not we really sent a bill and really sent things out and
oh, on this one arcade, you mean?
yeah, this one arcade, yes.
Oh, yeah, no. Well, I'm not sure if they are misunderstanding fiscal year versus calendar year. They renewed halfway through this calendar year.
Okay.
So they renewed at the fiscal year mark. I'm not sure what it's going to take to get them to knock that off. So they've operated for the, last year, for the first half of the year without having a license. I don't know if Regal, their landlord, cares to get involved in this or not.
I mean, the dates by which it's usable, the license would have the dates on it, correct?
Yeah,
And so I don't know what, it's very simple.
yeah. I love talking to these out-of-state entities that really don't give a sneeze about what we're telling them, but it gets real old. But anyhow, they
I
did
think we-
eventually pay, but they paid really late.
I think we could probably send them a letter too, just to have something documented in writing.
We've done that way. I can recycle our old Dunning letter to them and do the same thing again.
We'll keep chasing them until they pay.
Yeah.
But in any event, I mean, if you approved it and they sent payment in the next week or two, then I could release it,
Yeah.
which is kind of how we've traditionally done this.
Right. And so are we doing this as one vote or a series of
If
votes?
you want to vote that slate of everything that's in the folder, that is everybody, and that the only, condition would be no one gets out of here if they haven't paid, and that leaves one. Everyone else who's due to renew has paid.
And then if I read correctly, out of the ones that had licenses last year, only one has sort of gone away and is not getting a license. And
That's
we've
true.
added some new ones.
That's another arcade that was in Solomon Pond Mall that
Yep.
is gone out of business. There are some ads at the very end, like,
Yep.
we never extracted, if you will, entertainment licenses from Qdoba, and they complied. Same with Muya, same. So they have entertainment licenses. Because if they're playing recorded music, that actually does qualify for an entertainment license. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but just to be kind of uniform between how we're
Yep.
treating all the restaurants. There's
Yep.
more to go after, but I'm just taking it a couple at a time.
Yep. Great. So I'm mostly looking at the feedback on licenses 2023 spreadsheet, because that's a list of all the licenses,
That's it.
all the feedbacks that are generally found that all said no issues with the liquor ones at the top.
That is correct. Yep. And Chief Shartner has added that everyone, you can see a lot of blanks for the building commissioner, but the only one he's weighing in on is to show that every liquor licensed restaurant has had a successful inspection. So there's a lot of blanks under the building commissioner, but he's really just showing which ones had to have an inspection with himself and the fire inspector, and everyone passed.
Good.
So would you
That's-
like a motion, Scott?
Yes, please.
Would it be?
You could just vote the whole slate of what's on the agenda that you're renewing.
Okay,
One is a letter to the ABCC confirming that all liquor licenses timely renewed by November 30th. Another is one for the ABCC showing all the money collected for liquor licenses over the past year. Those are regular, and also that there were no infractions against any liquor license holders. And the last one is a renewal of all of your calendar year 2023 select board issued licenses as presented, with the condition that anyone who hasn't paid, that be withheld from release.
okay, Mary, so now that you've said that, I'm going to say so moved.
I queued it up just so that you could just say so moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Great. Great job, Mary. I know there's a lot of little moving parts and details. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Motion passes then. And then the Next new business item is discussion and potential vote on extending the fire chief contract through January 31st, 2023.
So this is very straightforward. This is a 1-month extension of Chief Clark's contract. He has agreed while we're wrapping things up to hang on with us 1 month more in January. There is no change except to the term of the contract. The salary remains the same. The only thing that is added are what they call the special days of pay, which are if he's required to work New Year's Day or New Year's Day observed in accordance with MGL Chapter 48, Section 57E. He's granted an additional day's pay. Those are literally the only changes, the date and those special holidays that fall within that 1 month period. And
So
we're
do you need-
thankful
you
he
need a
agreed.
motion? You need a motion?
Yes, please.
I make a motion to extend the fire chief's contract, as Kristen has explained, through January 31st of 2023.
Seconded.
All looks fairly straightforward to me. Is there other questions or comments? Then Hawkins, aye.
Thank you, Chief Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Clark.
Many thanks.
There is a hand up in the audience.
Oh, do you want to take the hand or do you want me to take a vote?
We'll give the person a chance. Justin.
Hi, Chairman. You can take your vote. I just wanted to say that one of 4 candidates for the new fire chief. I've been following, I missed your general comments at the beginning of the meeting. But I want to say that it's been a great experience with MRI. Kristen, I've been to 2 meetings. It's been great. I'm work for a fire district who has 2 towns, and this has been refreshing to see a town like Berlin where the people work together. We don't normally have that in Rhode Island, so it's been a great experience. So just wanted to say that whether you choose me or one of the other 4 candidates, it's been a very fair process. MRI has been great. When I met with Kristen, it's been great. And I've enjoyed watching your meeting tonight. It kind of gives a little fresh insight to government that does work. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief Lee.
This is any sort of regular watcher. The 3 of us in the select board are definitely different people and definitely opinionated at times, but we do find a way to respect each other and get through it for the most part. And we all have our off nights. And so thank you, Justin. We're voting on the extension then. So I said aye. Chris?
Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Okay. I think that brings us to board questions, comments, and liaison updates. Chris, you want to get us started?
I don't have anything.
Okay. I had the Agriculture Commission, we've already dealt with their sort of piece. Kristen, do you, any updates on 3 Gates Pond?
I do have updates. So the building has been vacated and we are checking on it periodically to make sure that it stays that way for the protection of the individuals who were residing in the building.
Great.
Should there be any further issues, we will consult with legal counsel.
Right. People who are watching later on or even in the audience now that you know, when you see sort of strange activities, or not even strange, when you see, you know, construction going on and not sure whether or not it's licensed or appropriate, you know, feel free to reach out. Walking my dog around town, there are definitely times where I've dropped an email and said, hey, I'm walking around and there seems to be a lot of construction on this. And I happen to be, for what I do, I get to see what building permits have been pulled, and sometimes there's no permits on some pretty substantial construction. And those, you know, the bureaucracy is a pain sometimes, but it's done to make sure the safety of those people who live and work in these buildings. And so sadly, there was an unsafe condition that was put together that the towns had to get more involved in than we would have had permits been pulled and inspections done before the work was done.
And I would like to
thanks.
pass along, Scott, on that note, thanks from Richard Hanks, on behalf of him and his inspectors. He was very thankful for the support of the board.
Mhm. And I think we found the people in the building who were renting weren't native English speakers, and we actually had someone on staff. I want to say fire staff, if I
Yep.
remember correctly, who spoke that language and helped make sure the people who were impacted understood what was going on and not just, slap something on a building and walk away.
Correct. I believe one of the inspectors actually spoke the
Okay.
language as well, which was very lucky.
Yep. Because even when, messy things happen, we try to make sure that people are at least aware of what's going on and understand things the best we can. Peg,
Scott, question for you.
Yep.
Did you ever hear back from the Boys and Girls Club in Hudson as to whether Berlin kids could go?
yes, they very clearly say Berlin kids could go. Their
Yay.
website lists the 3 towns, they actually have physical presences. And in those 3 towns, they receive money from the town to pick kids up at schools. And so why they're highlighted a little bit more, but Berlin kids are welcome at their activities.
Good, good,
Yeah.
good, good.
But they wouldn't get rides, correct?
Right, because the town doesn't pay to have the rides picked up at our schools and brought there, correct?
Okay. Maybe there's something we should do as far as advertising it then? Because I don't know that people know this. We could talk about it at a
Yep.
next agenda.
Sure.
And then Kristen, to you, I ran into not 1, but 2 earthwork board members and kind of put the bug in their ear to giddy up and go do something. And they tried to, back skate and be like, oh, well, Margaret. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I sent you all the information that you need along with what Middleborough has done regarding a policy and not a bylaw. So, and basically said, you do something or we will. So I'm, not that we will, but hoping that that might have been enough to get them going. So I'll let it go through the holiday season and then I will hunt and seek. Again, given the ones that they were the ones who pulled it off of May, so 6 months later and nothing's happened. So I'll keep you posted
Okay.
on that. Concom has really been the only one meeting. They're fine. They've got a bunch of issues going, but nothing critical. I'm done.
Great. I think that brings us to executive session. We actually do have one tonight.
Yes.
The board is going to enter, this is a legal thing, so I gotta say, it. The board is going to enter an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, A, number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel. That being the treasurer, tax collector position, and the fire chief position. I think we need to have a vote of the select board to go into executive session. So Hawkins, aye.
Keith, but are we staying here or?
Yes.
Okay,
We're going to stay here, and sadly,
And
that
we'll-
means the people who are here will,
Boot them out.
all right.
unless
Stone
they're
eye.
part of the executive session.
Keith,
Stone eye.
Okay, and then Kristen, is there anyone in the audience who needs to be promoted to be part of this conversation tonight?
Yes, I do have our consultant from MRI, Brian Duggan, and Mary, you're able to do some kind of lock of the meeting once we.
No, but I would have to
Yeah.
just watch the audience and
Yeah.
so you only want Brian promoted at this time and the others should check out.
Correct.
Yes,
And
and we'll
you're not
only,
returning to open session thereafter.
No.
right, we're only to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Good night, June.
Hi, June.
All right, I will, I'll remove her. All right, there she goes.
Yep.
And
Unless you
stand
really
by,
want
Brian.
Well, Brian, and we can turn off the recording, I believe.
That is correct. Sorry about that. Yep. And
Thanks, everyone, for bearing with us. It's what, 9:17 now. We've left executive session, and as promised, we only come back to adjourn. So is there a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
And seconded.
Let's see, Hawkins, aye.
Keith,
Stone eye.
Thank you very much, everyone. We will see you on the 9th as our next meeting.